Do, 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 do. G'day. Zero intro. I don't have an intro yet for the Euro Live one. I am going to create one. I haven't decided how it's going to be, what style, but it will happen in your lifetime at least. God, I've got to have an intro just to be annoying at a minimum. Okay. Greetings and salutations, peeps. Yes, greetings and salutations to you as well. You know, sort of the... Yes. Greetings here, or greetings all. Here's my suggestion, pre-Harry viewing. Moira's drive-through. God almighty. Am I getting that bad, am I? Good. Hello once again. Oh, good to see you, T2. God. One without the low class humour. Just a simple hello. G'day, Serge. G'day, Scott. Lambs, good to see you here. And Dominique as well. G'day, mate. And there's Alex from the Netherlands. Our good Dutchie. Actually, my friend Sean, he's part, on his father's side, he's part Dutch. Yes. There you go. What do they say? A few points of separation for everyone. Yes. It's the evening drill. Yes, he is. He's the nice troll. The other one's the, Westy. He can be a bit, he has a few teething problems. We're working on them, but it's a hard gig. Let me just align my spitter to the center. So when I do spit, it goes center. It doesn't go over the keyboard. Yeah, I know. It's when I get excited, only when I get excited. Yes. I just have to be prepared for these things. Yes. Well, some views view the earlier part. Oh, God. Well, I have to be careful what I say about Westies because my younger sister's moved over there. So, I can't be... I need to sort of be a bit careful so I don't upset her and she goes, she'll have a go at me. A rant catcher. Is that your new role, mate? Yes. Good to see some of you guys. Anything of interest or anything you guys would like to ask? Anything goes. Can be slightly amusing. Come on, guys. Any questions? Anything interesting that you guys want to talk about beyond the salutations? Dominique, about fructose glycation. Even through its 7 times, it doesn't spike in the blood so much, and it's gone in 4 hours. So, is it so bad after all? See, this is where it becomes interesting about fructose. While fructose does not spike insulin on its own, so if you actually just give somebody just a pure fructose, That's true. It will not spike insulin like glucose. But on the beta cells, there's a fructose receptor. So what happens is when you do, because fructose doesn't come on its own. If you have honey, it's part of its glucose, part of its fructose. If you have refined sugar, it's 50-50. So they come in pairs. Fructose may be higher in something like high fructose corn syrup or a few other things, but it doesn't come on its own. And as a consequence, because there is that receptor on the beta cells in your pancreas, you get an over-exaggeration of the insulin response. That's the difference. That is why when you have refined sugars, unlike pure glucose like a potato, you don't get as much as a magnified response. You get appropriately what is required for the amount of glucose you've taken in. And usually that's slowed down because of fiber and stuff like that. In a refined sugar, one, it's pronounced, but then it's magnified by the actual, the actual fructose hitting those receptors. Because what it's signaling to the brain, saying a lot of sweetness is coming in. That's what it's saying to the brain. And it's no different. This is why alcohol, sugars, and all that affect the brain in the same way. And so we've found that alcohol, sugars, while they may not have the glycating effect or may not have, they still raise insulin. They still have an effect on insulin. And that's a problem, because when you hit that receptor in the beta cell and you force this response, and it actually is detected from the tongue, it sends a signal immediately saying, sugar's coming in, get ready for it, And because sugar is so sweet, refined sugar compared to glucose at the receptor, that's the thing. It magnifies the effect. And so you get an over response. That's why when you have a potato, you can get some level of satiety from pure glucose. But if you basically go and have something like, sugar or whatever that's got fructose in it, or like fruit that's got fructose in it, have you noticed the over-exaggeration? You can go through a lot of fruit. You can just eat and eat and eat until you're stuffed, until you start. Some people, small kids can do that in an uncontrollable way and start basically getting diarrhea, So it has that magnifying effect. That's what's not good. That is why, because of a lot of this refined sugar, that's why you see vegans who are fruitarians and all that, they're constantly eating like mad. They're even worse than the other vegans. They're uncontrollable. Their drive, it's not only the lack of, the actual calories that they need, that they're hungry, but they have this insatiable drive. It's like a madness. It's a frenzy type thing. And you can see people that eat chocolate bars and all that at work. They go and get their little treats and all that. They're constantly going back and forth, getting their little hit, because they over-exaggerate insulin. Things are pushed down within about 1 or 2 hours. It's, below the floor. They feel really shit. They want another sugar boost. So that's the other nasty thing about fructose that nobody tells you about. And this is the food industry always hides that. They go, look at these rat studies. Look at the insulin. Very little response. That's true if you give pure fructose. But food doesn't come like that. And that's where you get this over-exaggeration. And then, but the glycating effects are bad. If you're on a diet which is a sad, flat inflammatory diet in general, it just magnifies it. So, and, that's an issue, that it's 7 times more glycating. If you consider somebody's on an inappropriate diet, not getting enough sulfur amino acids because of poor soils and stuff like that, if they're eating in particularly plant-based, where they're not getting enough sulfur from the soils, because now it's all basically all these petrochemical nonsense, those people are not going to have sufficient sulfonation to reduce the stickiness within their blood vessels. So that 7 times glycating effect is going to be more problematic compared to, because they've already got low, that the negative charge to repel things, add glycating factors, it becomes even stickier. Platelet aggregation, things like all these sort of things that create a lot of problems and inflammation in the arteries, and over time they lead to cardiovascular issues, strokes, and all sorts of other things. And this is the sort of thing, that is why it's not a good idea. And the other thing is, if you're eating a high-fat animal diet, adding fructose in there really ramps up the Randle cycle. Not a good thing. So, and that increases resistance. This is why they do the rat studies. What do you think? They throw in fat and they throw in fructose in. They know it does it. It induces it. They can go, look, they can point. Because what do they say? Oh, if you just give somebody fructose, not an issue. But when you add basically fat, look at the problem. But they don't tell you the Randle cycle and stuff like that. So it's a deception. And that's how they do these dodgy studies. And that's why you can't believe them. We're a bit more wiser. We understand the Randle cycle. We know that the actual ratio, the glucagon to insulin ratio, when you're having a pure amount of meat and fat, is 1.3. For pure glucose, which is like, let's say, potato, it's 4. But when you basically have an all-you-can-eat buffet like a McDonald's diet, which includes massive amounts of fructose in drinks and, refined fats, which have got, a lot more energy in them, problematic in that regard. And then you've basically got all these refined sugars in combination. They can magnify the actual ratio as high as 70. That's massive orders, and that is why these refined oils and sugars together in combination can create this insulin resistance. It's just too fast. You're getting energy coming in far too fast, overloading the system. So this is the problem with all these refined foods, which is the key problem in it. The problem is we, as carnivores or keto or low carb people, tend to consume more fat to get the fat soluble vitamins, to get more health and all that. When you throw in there a lot of fructose, it really does. There's no benefit in it. It actually causes more issues than it's worth. Fine if you've got a cold and you put a bit, like a teaspoon in tea and you have it to deal with a sore throat or something like that. That's fine. I do that myself. But to be putting down large amounts, no, I wouldn't recommend it. And if people basically want some sort of carbohydrate, do the old bodybuilders thing. Well, milk and eggs. That's what they used to do. They didn't have, they didn't bother with fructose. They didn't bother with that. They knew fructose actually made you fat. Somebody wanted to cut. The last thing they wanted to do is throw in that's why those old bodybuilders never had those protruding sort of, bellies. Today's bodybuilders have got those bellies and the muscles. Those old ones were ripped and cut, because they got the anabolic effect of milk and eggs and stuff like that. And basically they didn't get, and they were basically able to clear out the small amount of glucose that was in those products and got more of the general anabolic effect to build muscle tissue. And that's why these guys, you can actually see them, even when they were trained, they looked slightly ripped, where today's athletes don't look like that. They bulk up and they really look like fat, they look very unhealthy. And that's why I say to people, that's not the way to do it. Do it like the old-fashioned bodybuilders did it. So, yeah. And some people have approached me and asked me for the old bodybuilders tips, and I've given them. So, I'll have to ask Dad for that. He's still working on his lotto numbers. Oh, God. I was typing as fast as I could. I was trying to help him out, are you? God, give up on that idea. Is that coffee there? No, it's not coffee. I had my milk prior to starting this, and it's 6 o'clock, and that's it. No more food. This is just, as you can see, I don't want to spill it. Water. That's all it is. It's hard to work out the angle with the light coming down and hitting my glasses, so I don't want to spill any water on it. But yes, if you really want to see it properly, see water. Don't you believe me? Fucking LT, you're very untrusting. What causes? Okay, what's the cause for optimism? Can you see at this time? Optimism in what regard? The general malaise that exists with the economy and the it is. Look, I do worry. I can tell you one thing: I'm keeping my powder, so to speak, dry and waiting for the a bit of the. It won't be depends on some countries will collapse economically. It will have bigger downturns than others. But I'm waiting for cheap equities to snap up. So that's what I'm waiting. In that regard, I'm sort of in a slightly different position, but I think people like myself and people, especially people that are even wealthier than me, should be paying more taxes to support the general society. So I shouldn't profiteer as much, in my opinion. So I think it's unhealthy for a society because it creates a very destabilizing environment for the general populace. It's not a good thing. And the other thing is just general capitalism. I don't know where it's going, but it's becoming more and more unstable as we move along. And the other problem is, now they're starting to outsource things. They're trying to use robotics and automation and AIs. And the problem is, at the end of the day, yes, okay, you get all these machines doing a lot of this stuff, but who's going to fucking do the work? If nobody's doing the work, then who's going to basically buy the products? It starts becoming a very unstable sort of future in that regard. Maybe they want to put us all on the kibble, kill us off through not being able to reproduce, and then they can basically not have to worry about an army of unemployed wanting to, take them on like they did with the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the what was it? The other one, the English Civil War, and whatever else. So yes, it is worrying about the future in that regard. It would be nice to see a peaceful transition to a sort of something like a Star Trek universe, or direct democracy with a antitrust, anti-monopoly type legislation, breaking these things up and actually creating options for for the middle class to basically rebuild themselves, because they're being crowded out by cheap money, which is the biggest problem. There's a lot that can be said, but at the moment I'm trying to be optimistic, but it's really hard to put it that way. Doesn't seem like there's any real vision out there for anything. It's just they're just playing it by the numbers each time new crisis happens. It's just sort of crisis management, unfortunately. So it is worrying, especially for the younger people. It's not looking as pretty in that regard. Anyway, off that sort of stuff. Yeah, fruitarians end up about 5,000 calories a day. Yeah, look, and because there is, and the problem is with that, yes, that may satisfy their hunger, but the downside is that they are just slowing down, because they're getting all the energy from that. What they're doing is they're slowing down the breakdown of muscle. That's all they're doing. So they end up skinny fat, which is very unhealthy, because your metabolic rate goes really down in order to hold. And so if they go back to a standard diet, they just balloon out in size. So from a low metabolic rate and all that, so yeah, it's, and even Ansel Keys, actually, when he did these low calorie type, low fat diets, people lost a lot of weight. They became emaciated, but they lost a lot of muscle. And then they put back more fat than when they went back onto normal calories. At maintenance calories, they went back, and they still put on more weight, and it took them a while to get it off. But because they were younger people, it was, and also they were more physically active because people worked outdoors. They weren't office workers. They were able to basically come back to a certain level of homeostasis. The problem is most people are too sedentary, so when they do that, this yo-yo dieting as well, which is very similar, they end up really, really fat and fat and fat with a lower and lower and lower, and then with hypothyroidism and stuff like that. And you'll hear a lot of these idiots out there say, "Oh, you need more to keep your to support your thyroid," like Chris Masterjohn and Christopher Walken and people like that say, "Oh, you need," and Ray Pete and all that. But when people do that, they get fucked, completely and utterly fucked. So their thyroid and all that sort of stuff, because fundamentally, what supports the thyroid is the nutrients. It's the nutrients. On any diet, if you don't have enough selenium, enough zinc, enough iodine, if you don't have the stuff that's required to basically produce the actual thyroid hormone, to basically convert the T4 to T3, it's irrelevant. Even because somebody actually asked Steve Finney this question. He basically said, we haven't seen any issues like that. As people, as long as they're getting these nutrients, not an issue. The only issue is with light, and that's a different issue altogether. That's a different angle on melatonin, and I'm going to make a video about it because nobody else has talked about it, and that's a different angle altogether. BTEs. You will have to persevere, unfortunately. I do have a D job, as you guys know. Maybe I'll do something with Bart, and it's easier that way. Then I don't have to do any fucking preparation. I just can go on there, blurt it out, and he can record it and do all the post stuff, since that's his day job. I may do it that way. Hello, long time no see. G'day, mate. How's it going? It's good to see you, Robbie. Oh, look at this. And then you get the insult. Ah, God, he doesn't miss an opportunity to get stuck into people. Ah, he's bad. Oops, that's the same one. Let me move further down. I saw you had like, what is it? 14 the other day, record cold. I thought there was, oh yeah, global warming, haha. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, things were quite cold down here. Then they got yesterday it was quite warm. It warmed up for no apparent reason. And then, and it's really been weird. And even through this winter, to be honest, this winter hasn't been that cold at all. It's been quite warm, but the nights are cold, and the problem is, you're not hearing any of the vegetators out there saying, "Oh, it's all that CO2." CO2's collapsed in the amount that we're putting out. Collapsed because China and all these other economies have turned off. I've been saying for a long time, we're ignoring this magnetosphere that's weakening, and the 800 to 1,000 year sort of change in the in basically the poles, reversal of the poles. And as you get this weakening, where do you get the weakening the most? At the poles. So that's where you're getting more radiation coming through. That's why they're warming. The poles are warming faster than other parts, because that's where the fucking radiation is coming in. More of it because of the weakening of the magnetosphere. That's a problem. Well, if you consider it a problem, that's just something we can't change. But it's not being put into the models, let alone clouds and all that is sort of being approximated or whatever. But they're not taking any of these measurements. And you've got these other scientists who are, physicists who are looking at this, but they're not climate scientists. So there's no connection between the two. Unfortunately, there's no communication. Everybody in their little speciality, and that's the unfortunate thing, that this isn't being taken into account, and we're not measuring the amount of energy coming through, the additional energy that's playing this role. And that's why we're at a minimum, and people are thinking it's carbon, but carbon's dropped. But still, we've had a very mild winter. I've been out with, like yesterday, I was out with shorts. It's been quite humid and quite mild for our winters. That's unusual. But in the night, it gets really cold. But in the daytime, it's warmer. Why? Because, we're right at the sun. As we rotate on our axis, we're being hit directly. And then in the night, there's a weakening of, this. We get less energy that's maintained on the darker side. As a consequence, temperatures are in the sort of normal lower levels as they would be on a regular summer, so it changes dramatically. We notice it. I notice it in Hobart because I usually go out walking both in the afternoons and the evenings sometimes. So I know, where other people are cozying up in home, they've got no fucking idea. So I can tell you, sometimes I freeze my butt off out there, and I've left my nuts along the walk path a couple of times. I had to go back and retrieve my nuts. Yes, they froze off. Literally, yes, severed by the cold. Yes, I can tell you that, sort of the nonsense out there is never ending. Now they're going to say that all this is due to some other bizarre thing, or just, oh God, they'll come up with something bizarre. They're not talking about it because, yes, in that regard. Anyway, surprising, the bomb allowed the records to go up a couple of years ago, and they had a bug that stopped records of -10 or greater as being recorded. Look, there's a lot of shenanigans. The problem is they don't do a proper scientist looks at all the raw data and then considers what is confounded and says, okay, these weather stations have been moved, so we're going to discount those because they've been moved. A different elevation will give you a different temperature. We have to take them out. We have to go on the raw data. It's like observation. When we observe gravitational lensing in space, or, certain types of effects, or we create these sensors in the ground to pick up, certain types of, subatomic particles. We actually measure them properly to work out exactly what they are. We use, particle accelerators to measure things precise. In science, you can't speculate it. That's not science. In research, that's a different. Research is research, but research has to be replicatable. If you can't replicate research, it's not science. Science is something that is replicatable, and everybody can basically accept. It's like, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, certain quantum, behaviors, the quarks, the muons, all these subatomic particles, their sort of structures and they're basically the way they function, all that. These things have been precisely measured by countless scientists around the world, and they've got the same measurements. They've confirmed these sort of things. That's how science works. These sort of idle speculations. Oh, we think it seems like, we're massaging the figures. When you start massaging data, you basically start modifying things. It's best to say, okay, these stations have been moved. We're going to get rid of them. Yeah, I'll make Blinky needs to be shown. I will, under those circumstances, yep, you will basically take those stations out and then do the data, and then cross-reference the data with the weather balloon data from the 1950s, because they don't match. And this is what the Conleys were saying. So there's a lot of things. I'm not saying that the Conleys are right. They could be wrong, or they could be partially right, or whatever. I've got no idea. It needs to be confirmed, and because only one. That's a hypothesis that they've put out. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a proven hypothesis. It hasn't been refuted. That's true, but it hasn't been confirmed either. So either way, we don't know. That's how empiricists work. That's how scientists work. We don't know. Now, you can support a hypothesis, like Bart supports the actual Conley's hypothesis. I think it's a good hypothesis, but I don't outright support it like Bart. That's the only difference, because I do have, this magnetosphere issue that I believe is not being taken into account, and that may be another factor. So I think we need to basically look at the picture much better. I think what the Conleys do is basically show how ridiculous the carbon theory is. hypothesis is. What I throw into the mix with the magnetosphere issue is a different view of it. Now, I could be partially right, partially wrong, or whatever. It's just a hypothesis at this stage. The reality is we need to be honest. And the honesty is that we don't have sufficient, good science in this area. This is why we debate. When you debate and you've got difference of opinions in science, it's because it's not settled. It's because I can bring up things that can refute that view. I can bring up confounders and stuff like that. And when you bring up confounders, it's like the stuff with the PUFA. I can bring up a whole lot of other arguments. People that are consuming far more have no health problems, but from animal sources, which basically means the argument people are putting that PUFA's bad, all PUFA's bad, is wrong. Seed oils, there's plenty of science to show that, because most of all this science on rats and all that is with seed oils. So we know that's pretty much confirmed both in rats and in humans from what we've seen with the mechanistic studies back that were done in the 80s, 83 and 84, showing lipid peroxidation from vegetable oils. And it was hidden for many years. But as far as PUFA goes from animal, we know we've been consuming lard for a very long time, a whole lot of populations. The Okinawans, longest lived populations, the Sardinians, another long-lived population. So, these are paradoxes. And in science, when you have paradoxes, it means your underlying assumptions are wrong or partially wrong. Now, they need to be further investigated with proper human clinical studies. They haven't been done. So all we can say is that, these people have got hypotheses, but unproven. Now, Paul thinks that his hypothesis is really strong, but he actually argues it from where I get annoyed with Paul is he argues it from a position as if it's, I've got so good, it seems so, it's more than likely plausible. So he really believes it in a very strong way. Where that's because he's a doctor, he hasn't been trained in science. Somebody who's technical like myself, or Bart, who's a scientist, understands precision, because in the sort of areas that I come is part of the sort of the applied sciences, which is what the engineering faculty is. So our sort of environment is we deal with data, we deal with precision data. And so, I need to measure something properly, because that's what we do in my field, surveying, mapping, whether you're doing any of that remote sensing or any engineering discipline, it's proper measurements. There is no speculation. You can't basically, it's like building a building and say, we think it's gonna stand up. No, it either stands up or it doesn't. So you have to apply really good, very good science and very good precise measurements. The problem is in the medical field, it's a craft. It's not really a science. Medicine, basically, if you go back and look historically, it's not really a science. From their days where they were using chemicals and nearly killed half the population, or they were using basically enemas and this stuff, and it's not precise. It's basically there's a bit of science there, and it's primarily biochemists, people like that, and they come from a non-science, sort of pseudoscience, which was both the old alchemists. And so, they don't have this same discipline that physicists have, the sort of other disciplines of science. And that's the reality. And that's why they approach things in the way they do in nutrition, in health, in general. It's sort of, they go with sort of gospel doctrines. They go with doctrines. Science doesn't have doctrines. Something is either a 0 or a 1. And it has in research, and it has to be replicatable to be considered a proof that you've actually been able to have sufficient weight of evidence to infer or to prove something is causal, or to prove something is what it is, or that measurement is what it is. And that's the problem with that sort of field. And so I understand why Bart gets frustrated talking to these people, and I get frustrated talking to these people because they think differently. which is the biggest problem. Anyway, let's move on because I've blabbered far too long, as I usually bloody do. Poor Saladin reacts badly to milk. Oh, well, fuck. Poor, bad luck to him. There is lactose-free milk. You can get lactose-free milk, or you can ferment it and get rid of the sugar. So it's not as if you can't. I know one person that used lactose-free milk. So there are a lot of other options. Vince, yes, had an awesome physique, exactly. Those guys they weren't using any supplements. There were no friggin' special chemicals that they could use back then and all that sort of stuff. And they had those old bodybuilder sort of anabolic smoothies, which anybody needs, they just have to email me and I'll send them. I've sent it to other people, which is basically based on eggs and milk and cream. So it's a very low carbish type, very high in protein and fats. So if they could do it back then and build those physiques, I don't know what's wrong with these modern day guys that say they need carbs. All they fucking end up is, you know what, because they're lazy. Let's be honest, they're fucking lazy. They fucking sit there carb loading and building up in there, and then they cut everything up and they start exercising like mad, trying to burn that off, in a low carb state and trying to build muscle. And they never get when you look at their physiques, they're never as good as some of those old blokes in the past. So I'm not convinced some of and some of them, when they're not actually in training, God, they look bad. You should see them. I've seen a couple of them and I go, oh, fuck me. They look like, like fucking 10-ton Tessie whales. They look really bad. Yes. What can one say? How's it tasting? How is it tasty going? I miss it so much. Oh, you mean the taste? The taste of Tasmania you're talking about? I presume, or something like that. Or Salamanca, the thing. Well, they actually created it's only 500 people allowed. They've created this little market, and I don't know how it's going to go. We'll see in the next, because it's all local, no tourists, so who knows. Are you suggesting there was a conspiracy involved with the Bureau of Meteorology concealing temperatures to support global warming theory? Not me. Somebody else suggested that. Well, look, what they've done is they've actually, there's a number of things out there where they've changed some of the rules, how they actually measure things and stuff like that. The whole reason is because it's, rather than admitting that basically, they don't have the capacity to measure things precisely or measure things sufficiently. What they're trying to do is they're trying to use certain statistical methods of like forcing it into certain averages where they can sort of manage it with less confounders to deal with. So they're sort of excluding certain things and trying to stick to certain things and trying to, because otherwise you get these big variations which become so irreconcilable in the way they can measure things. So I don't think they're doing it out of malice, but it's because it's poor scientific practices, and it's really coming from some of these other fields. See, remember, traditionally, this was done by physicists. It wasn't done by climatologists. Climatologists were more, let's put it this way. You know how you've got an engineer and a mechanic? Well, a climatologist is sort of a mechanic, making out that he's an engineer. Okay, that's what's really the case. And then you've got the traditional physicists that used to do this work that have been displaced by people working in these sort of, bureaus and organizations that are involved in meteorology. But the problem is these people are not trained in hardcore physics, and they're researching things and they're trying to simplify their models and all that to make it easy for them to do. And that's the problem, because the models don't match reality. So yeah, and then people have built their careers around, and it's sort of not a conspiracy, but I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose, this is a good gravy train. I don't want to jump off it. It's a bit of that sort of stuff. I've confronted in one case, one guy at one conference, which had to do with surveying and mapping, and this guy was from I can't remember which university he was from, but he was actually talking about climate science and stuff like that. And I basically, posed a few things. I was going to pose them, but there were a lot of my work colleagues, and I sort of, I don't want to basically create a lot of, for my work to sort of go, oh, Harry, bloody hell, couldn't you keep it to yourself? So I did, and then I caught him on the side and had a bit of a chat with him and threw a few things, and he tried to avoid me as much as possible. So yeah, so if your salary is dependent on it, say no more. I don't think it's people have sort of jumped in and gone in this direction, and yeah, it's poor. It's poor data and poor amalgamation of data. And also we're not being honest. We're not saying, look, we don't have the technology to measure water vapor properly, to measure these things. We don't have the technology. We just should be honest and say, look, there's a potential that there could be a problem, but we can't prove it either way. And we should mitigate to some extent. I can accept some mitigation, but not this sort of crazy hysteria where we're upending our whole society on very poor science. That's where I'm very critical. As from a point of view of what I would call risk assessment and risk analysis, you would say, okay, let's have some mitigation strategies and let's monitor the situation just to make sure, because even if it's basically a natural occurring thing, it's nothing man-made, just a natural occurring thing, we still have to mitigate it. We still basically have to have some strategies in the way so we can prevent any potential worse outcomes. It's like anything else. Every year, I mean, the United States has got a fund which basically deals with cyclones and stuff like that. Why have they got a fund? It's a mitigation strategy. And there's nothing wrong with having mitigation strategies. There's a difference between having a mitigation strategy and a difference basically upending the whole society with nonsense. One is different from the other. One is very political. The other is basically sound scientific analysis based on the amount of science we've got, which is limited. And from that, we extrapolate and say, well, there's a potential, the risk of, 50% or 30% or whatever. We will put certain mitigation strategies in place to offset that potential risk. It's like you take insurance, the same thing. That's what you're doing. You don't know whether your car's going to be run into, but there's a possibility, there's a certain percentage possibility that you can somebody will run into your vehicle. Now, they may not run into your vehicle, or you may run into somebody else's vehicle. That is not precise. It's basically an estimate. And that's all we can do with the current science. We can only estimate things, and we can mitigate to some extent from those estimations based on a cost benefit. That's what we should be doing, not this sort of bizarre, crazy things where we've basically made the whole society, go crazy about as if it's the end of the world and all that. That's just crazy stuff. Maybe it's where the conspiratorial side is maybe this gives them a leverage of a way of controlling the society, and a way of actually also neutralizing the normal position, which would come from sort of the working class type against the rich, and by polluting it with these middle class snowflakes, polluting and infiltrating the left with their craziness, what it's doing is it's neutralizing the key opponent of the elites, traditional key opponent, and it's muddying the waters. And that's probably part of the angle, that is being used out there. So, it's an absolute mess, because usually the young people are the most rebellious against, the status quo. Now they're the most supportive. It's just fucking crazy. They're in bed with the food industry, with all these guys against, the older middle class, which are in, the 50s and 40-year age bracket, that say this is just bullshit, makes no sense, but where, they've got the young, and, the young are the ones that are going to be inheriting this earth. Yeah, exactly. Yes. They're doing a very good job on us. We need to wake up the young and make them understand how these elites work and how they're being manipulated and used. As I say, they are the fifth echelon of the food industry, the vegans, but they just don't know it, unfortunately. Thanks, mate. Oh, LOL, laugh out loud. It does, but tasty. It's just awesome. I'm not sure about which awesome thing or that. I must have missed the earlier part. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yes, let us know, Scott. Put a link. Some other conversation. Go back to nutrition. Yeah. Hello, trouble. Somebody just got out of bed. Do I now? Oh, thank you. I don't think it's me. Somebody else. I've been skeptical of climate change about 14 years. Yep, fair enough. Yeah, nothing wrong with being skeptical. Being skeptical is being scientific. Empiricists are skeptical. We don't accept things at face value, and we accept that things that there's not good enough science is a hypothesis. We don't basically say we won't listen to anything. That's what authoritarians do. That's what people that are anti-science do. They say, no, we're going to stop all this. True empiricists say, we'll accept that, but we need that assertion to be tested. That's where we come from. We say, yep, it may be true, it may not, but we want it to be tested. These people aren't prepared to test it because they got different vested interests, unfortunately. Yes. You should be a fruit bat. You need to be a fruit bat for a day. Oh, God. You and various parts of your anatomies. Okay. I'm completely and utterly confused about these. There must be a conversation that I haven't been part of. Seems like it. Oh, God, I lost my spot. Shit. Hold on. I'll find my spot. Okay. Yes. Drunk Bo was so funny. Okay. Bo was fun. Was drunk. Okay. Got it. I'm with his third glass of wine. Yep. Yes. Yep, I did. It's winter. Ugh. Yes. Yes. Normal Aussie lingo. Yes. Yes. I don't mind. You can take the mickey out of me. Go for it, T1. I know you like it. You enjoy it. Just for you, Harry, downing some pork ribs. Great, mate. Great, Chris. Good to hear. Yeah, I noticed your comment earlier about that. I'll actually show you because I actually found this. This is what annoys me. This is Amazon US, and they actually have this product. And when you actually go, because they don't show you the price unless you basically just go out. There it is, 1785. And in Australia, this company here, because they probably have to import it and they don't get a large amount. Where was it? And yeah, 50 for the same product, 56.21, which is fucking annoying. Okay, now these are the satchels. There is a bit of a difference in the satchels if you look at them. Where's he got it? There's the part there. And as you can see, the potassium is about half. It's about 1,300 compared to the other one, which is, they also have boron on this. So potentially if you take 4 satchels, you could be getting continuously very high boron levels, which, as I said earlier, I'm a bit wary. But, if you're not doing it very often, probably not an issue, probably a helpful thing, especially for the price and all that. But compared to this, you remember, we can't get this in Australia. And we can't get this from Amazon in Australia either, which is really friggin' annoying, because even if you convert it to Aussie dollars and all that, it's still about 20-something bucks. It's half that price. So it is a bit bloody annoying in that regard. So these are the sort of issues in that regard. So yeah, you can look at this at some foods and stuff like that. That are there. They just have shit. The type they ignore a lot of the other foods. So I'm gonna do a thing about potassium, what the real requirements are. So because we need to settle this electrolyte bloody thing. The reality is, I'll just show you, because I actually did, because after Chris said to me, some of his issues, I basically did this today. And as you can see, I'll go back. Let me just get rid of that for a sec, the sharing. And if I go back to this, there's my 99. That's my, that's my heart rate, 65, 64, 65. So if you go, I did quite a few. You have to do a resting. And so my blood oxygenation is about 98 to 99. And, and these are the later ones that started creeping up a bit. That went to 66, 67, 68, 69, 69. The only reason that started going a bit up is because, I was holding it with one hand, and the more you hold it with one hand, your heart rate starts going up as the activity level in your body goes up. But you can actually see that, generally speaking, and that's just basically taking a quick rest and all that, my heart rate doesn't really go high because I get enough sodium. Sodium suppresses cortisol. Sodium suppresses, norepinephrine, epinephrine. It basically brings these down, So you want higher heart rate, it's when those things go up, the adrenaline, So if you want to suppress adrenaline, sodium, you need to control. People in the past never had these issues. I mean, I asked my dad, and he says, what? Just didn't happen because people salt it. He still salts his food quite a bit out of, just habit, the way he's been brought up. We fear salt is our problem. The reality is when I do on the potassium and all that, you don't need as much as we think. We don't need, and we only lose a certain amount every day. So it's not what holds, it's at the potassium sodium pumps. If you don't have enough sodium on the outside, you're going to be dumping potassium, magnesium. Remember, you need magnesium ATP. You don't need it so much in the diet. You need to keep it in the cell so it doesn't come out. The only way when your insulin is low, the only way is to up. The only people that don't have to worry about losing electrolytes out of their cells is people that have got really high insulin, because it just can't fucking get out, and that's why they're bloated and waterlogged. They can't get rid of water and all this sort of stuff. So initially, when you do, and that's why I don't even use these supplements. I tell you, I don't even buy this. I basically just get a cheap magnesium supplement and have that, and basically also get cream of tartar, which is something that they put in cakes and stuff like that. And cream of tartar is a plant-based derivative thing, and it's very high in potassium, so it's a concentrated. So I use a portion of that. I measure it to get it right, and I put that, and I put salt in there, and then I drink that, And so if I've basically, let's say I've sweated a lot, I've lost electrolytes, I haven't been upping my sodium and all that, that's how I fix it quickly. And then the body will automatically adjust and come to homeostasis. And as long as I'm getting enough sodium in, it will maintain homeostasis. And I put plenty of salt. I've cured meats which have got plenty of salt. And so I put in my water a bit of salt all the time. And so I've never had issues with, this sort of your heart. That's just not normal. It's not enough salt. And then when you don't have enough salt and you've dumped out your other electrolytes to get the new homeostasis, so the pump, will basically equalize on both ends. I'm not using the other terms that I used last time. I'm just using really simplistic terms. You need to equalize between the two. And then you've got homeostasis. So you can either equalize with more of these minerals on both ends or less of these minerals on both ends. Because that's what the body does. If there's less here, it's going to be less here. You got more here, you're going to maintain more there. And things will equalize appropriately. This is why, once you basically fix your electrolytes and then you keep your sodium up, these issues, yep, I just sorted you out, zombie. These issues are not an issue. They cease to be an issue. They're only an issue when we get our electrolytes because we fear sodium. We need to overcome the sodium. People consuming 10 times the sodium before refrigeration. Just go back and look at the old videos. They used to pack the salt on fish and meats and all that continuously. Even all the studies that have been done is, when you do the proper studies, they show the only time is when you're high insulin. Go and check the video that I did, the first chat that I had with Pim. Go and check that. And I actually talk about this old study that was done in the 30s and how it was done and why when you've got high insulin on high carbohydrate, you need to eliminate all these. You can't take any electrolytes in because you will basically induce massive water retention, because that's what, and it doesn't matter even with small amounts of basically, any of these minerals. The researcher only supplemented, Walter only supplemented with iron. That was it, nothing else. So yes, that is why all animals seek out salt like mad. So be like the other animals in nature. Let's not throw away our, primal inheritance just because we've got modern day refrigeration. Okay, I will have to disagree with the temp of Antarctica going up. The large it's a part of the continent hasn't really gone. Look, there are different. The problem is with the poles, there are insufficient measurements. So we don't really know. We don't really know how much it's gone up, how much it's seasonal. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff like from Tony Hiller and others, and it's good arguments that they're putting forward, but even they are working off data which is very poor. So we don't know. All I'm saying is that we're getting more radiation that's coming through in terms of solar radiation. We're not measuring it. So whether that diffuses through the whole atmosphere and basically, you end up with that extra radiation diffusing through the whole atmosphere, nobody's tested anything. Nobody's measured any of this stuff. So we don't really know what it does. So I'm not arguing that the poles are getting warmer, but if people are arguing, this may be a reason why, because it's weaker at the, slightly offset from the poles, So maybe not. Maybe it's other factors. But I think that the hypothesis that I'm putting forward has some credibility, far more than some of theirs. So, but it's still a hypothesis. So we just don't have science. And that's the absolute honest truth. We don't have sufficient science. We're all speculating. Bart included, me, everyone, Conley's, everyone's, they may have done better measurements and may have refuted some of the other measurements, but still it's an incomplete. It's not taking into account a lot of the other stuff. So nobody's really taking into consideration the whole picture. And so we're all coming from different angles. What do you say? Posits that PUFA comes from the pig feed. Oh, you go to Asia, you should see what they feed pigs, any leftover crap. So a lot of grains, a lot of that sort of stuff, a lot of rice and all sorts of leftovers are fed to. So what's the difference? Pigs have always been fed shit. They're like a garbage disposal machine. So I'm not convinced, because he hasn't been able to provide proof. All he has is rat studies and they just giving them seed oils. So as far as I'm concerned, nope. Not credible argument at all. And I will do that. I need to do that other fucking video on PUFA at some stage as well, and just show some of these paradoxes and stuff like that properly. I talk about them, but actually show them so you guys can see them and use them as ammunition, so to speak. So I don't have to keep on answering this sort of stuff. I find it hard to imagine 1 billion internal combustion engines and billions of barrels of fossil fuel over decades does not have an effect on the atmosphere. Well, we don't know. We don't know, because if we look at historical data, there are cases where it is a greenhouse. Look, methane, water vapor, all these are greenhouse gases. But what their effect is on the atmosphere is a question. Let me put it this way. If you look at Venus is very concentrated. The majority of the atmosphere is, CO2. They're much closer to the sun, so they're getting more heat, and they're trapping more heat because it's more dense, the atmosphere. But if you look at Mars, on the other hand, where the majority of the atmosphere is also CO2, but it's much diffused, the concentrations, that means it's not dense, it's really, less dense. That's another reason why when spacecraft go into the Martian atmosphere, they go like a bat out of hell, and they have to slow them down before they get destroyed, hitting the ground. It's because it's the thin atmosphere, but the majority of it. But if you look at the composition of the atmosphere of Mars, the Martian atmosphere is basically for the size of the planet, because Venus is more similar to our size. For their size, they're actually got slightly more CO2 than we have. But it's a very cold planet. So if CO2 was the big driver of heat at such low concentrations, we would see some level there as well, higher than we measure. So the argument doesn't hold up, and we've got historical data which shows that doesn't mean it's not a greenhouse gas. It is, but it's a very weak greenhouse gas. It has a very low effect. Methane doesn't even stay in the atmosphere very long. It actually decays into carbon. After 12 years, it actually decays. The difference is the one from animals, I'll just let that go. The one from the the animals, which is the carbon-12 type, that actually gets recycled through natural systems because that's part of the carbon cycle. The other one, which is carbon-13, which is coming from shale oil and gas and stuff like that, that sort of stuff, that tends to stay longer in the atmosphere. So from animals, not an issue because it gets recycled. The one in the coming from fossil fuels has to actually degrade in a certain way, and it's less available to be. There's less uptake from plants. Let's put it that way, and it's a slower uptake. But it's still in terms of parts per million, the concentrations are very low. So when we look historically, we've had much higher levels, and temperatures haven't been dramatically higher. That doesn't mean it's not a greenhouse gas. This is where I sort of, have my differences with others. But the effect is very little, minor. And even I got Bart on one case to agree with me that it's very minor, because he was saying that it had no effect. And I said, no, it has an effect, but it's very minor. And it is very minor. It's the same thing with methane. It's very minor. The big players are clouds and water vapor. Water vapor is big. But I think we're also missing another point, which is this, the weakening of the magnetosphere. So more solar radiation is coming through than would normally come through. And that would be adding heat to the system. And so maybe that is where the additional heating is coming from. Because even in hot houses, they have to really ramp up the heat, adding like 1,000 to 2,000 parts per million. And even there, if you were to basically have it under cover, it wouldn't warm up, because the indoor ones where they add more, it doesn't get warmer from ambient temperature, normal ambient temperature. So, I'm not as convinced in that regard. And especially when there are other emeritus scientists out there that are also not convinced. There's one out of Princeton, Harper, and he basically talks about this doubling effect. You need to double just to get to 1 degree, is his view. Maybe he's right, maybe he's not. But that's what a lot of scientists up until very recently believed as well, what Harper is saying. That's what the traditional physicists believe. You have to double. So if you wanted to go to 1 degree, an additional 1 degree, you would have to basically add another 400 parts per million. Then you would have to add, for the next degree to go 2 degrees up from what we are now, an additional 2, you'd have to add double that, 1,600 parts per million. So you can actually see it's a logarithmic. You really have to put a lot. You have to have a number of industrial revolutions to get to those dangerous levels, as you can see. Well over 2,000 parts per million. We're not going to get there. Let's be honest, especially with the declining birth rate and a whole lot of other things and improvements and efficiency. That's why I say it's a non-issue, even if it was true. So, as I said, I'm not convinced, because, there's too many holes in a lot of these belief systems. So I'll leave it at that. In that regard, yeah, look, there are different interest groups in the ruling classes. They have different opinions for different reasons. But it doesn't negate the science. The science, unfortunately, is not good enough to really, that's why we're having arguments, because we don't have good science. If we had, it's like basically when Arvey made a point, and tried to have a go at Bart, and Bart said, well, come up with, I only need one study that shows that shows causal. You provide one study that can show causal, and fine. But could he? No. And that's the problem. Anybody can argue any position. I can argue any position. I can come up with a sort of hypothesis or whatever, but it means shit. So anyway. So we've still got, yes, steak and egg diet, yep. That's very popular. That goes way back to the early bodybuilding days, steak and eggs. So Yes, you need a god to keep you in line. Yes, he really had a really good body. Yes, definitely. It was raw milk back then. It definitely was. They used to use the yolks, and in many cases, the egg whites they used to get in a powder, so it had less. It had less of the problems of causing a biotin deficiency. So they used to use it in a powder form. So it was a different. It was like our modern day supplements, but it was an egg powder. So it's still around. You can still buy it. If you want the information, just send me an email, and I'll send you the whole formulation that they used to use. I've sent it to a few other people. I probably should make a fucking video about it, but with my time schedule, yes, it's probably easier for me to just shoot you through an email. Oh, YouTube have just told me Harry's on. Yeah, no trouble. Yes, I've basically watched some of my stats and stuff like that change on my YouTube thing, and I'm going, what the fuck's going on? So, yeah. Yes. Light on stats. Always, yeah, exactly. Yes. Statistics and bloody statistics. Yes. Unfortunately, we have far too much of that nonsense. Oops, I just lost my spot. Thank you, StreamYard. That is perfect. You're always a very nice program to fuck me around. Oh, where was I? God almighty, this drives me up the wall, StreamYard. Okay, I found my spot. Okay. What's that? What would be the... Oh, you're talking about... Look, the climate is changing. That's a definite. But the climate's constantly in change, in flux. Exactly what's really happening to the climate is an issue. And I basically say, well, the science is still not there. But we still should be smart enough to have some mitigation strategies. We don't have to go over the top about this, but have some at least. It's a balanced response, in my opinion, between, like anything, you take out insurance, but you don't go crazy on the insurance policy. Better to buy. Okay, they've actually got a product from iHerb. Okay, good. That was just a quick one that I found. That was the only reason. Yep, yeah. I don't bother with any of these sort of things, to be honest, Chris. I just basically, because I don't need it, I've just used cream of tartar in the bars. I fixed the problem and then just keep my sodium up. And yeah, as you saw the results, it's not an issue. You need a bit of piss flavour. He does say you need to basically check out where you are. Yes. Yes, the VAT side of things. Yes, that's true. Yes. Yeah, look, exactly like mine. The less sugar you have in your arterial system, and the more sulfur amino acids, the more the foods that create less stickiness, less of a problem. Problem is we have too many things that we have, let's say, indiscretions, to be honest, like my indiscretions with cider on Friday, and that adds glycating factors. So not a good idea. But I've tried to remedy that on the Saturday and Sunday with a few supplementals, but it still would have done a bit of damage. And I've got another one in a fortnight's time. Lucky me. Another person retiring that I know well. Yes. is things like that. Yep, a bit of that as well, because there are interest groups that get some benefit out of it. Said palpitations meant pounding of heart rather than a. When I said palpitations, I really meant a pounding of heart rather than a high heart rate. So you didn't have a high heart rate. That seems strange. Because usually, you know, a high usually it's associated with a high heart rate. But if you're talking about misfiring, like, where you're sort of firing, that's a different thing altogether. Where I would be concerned, because you do like to do a lot of aerobic exercise, and in the past you wouldn't have been using taurine. I would basically get on a 3 grams of taurine every friggin' day, just in case you've caused some enlargement, because through the left ventricular of your heart, taurine can actually reduce that. And it takes a long time to reverse, but it can reduce it. So I would get on 3 grams of taurine if that is the potential reason for it. So, and you're older, like in my age bracket, and after 40, our taurine levels start dropping quite a bit, and after 65, they collapse. So you're probably in a similar age bracket to me. You're 10 years away from substantial reduction in endogenous synthesis of taurine. So get onto the taurine. And while I take 1 gram, I would say to you 3, just in case that's the issue. Yes, I don't want you dropping dead while you're out there doing cardio. Key. Now, magnesium, cream of tartar, and salt from IGA does me. Exactly. Whatever works for you. Don't forget the other stuff as well. The liquid stuff. Why use cream of tartar instead? I mean, use whatever you like. That's just was a convenient thing for me back then when I was doing it, rather than actually buying a supplement. I've sort of fixed it. This was a number of years back. I haven't had any of those issues. The only time I actually got into trouble was when I was in Southeast Asia once, and I dehydrated quite a bit. And, I hadn't been really salting my food for whatever bloody reason. I just wasn't paying attention. And I tend to sweat quite a bit profusely because I've got those genetics as well, hypothermia, where when I move, I heat up quite a bit internally, which is good if you fall into the ocean. But, when you're in a tropical environment, it can be a bit of you can dehydrate faster. And I wasn't paying attention to that, and I got caught out. And I had my heart literally out here, and I literally went down to the lobby area, and I said to the guys, I need salt. And they just brought shitloads of salt there, and I had a couple of salt drinks and all that. And within about a bit over an hour, it sort of came down to normal rates. Then I went to sleep. So I learnt my lesson, let's put it that way. And from then on, I started salting my food while I was in Southeast Asia a bit more than usual. Yes. When I increase salt, I measure low, I measure low heart and higher over the night. Okay, but still getting that pounding and pissing. Yeah, that doesn't sound. It does sound like it may be an electrolyte issue. See if you fix it, especially the pissing side of things. And once that stabilizes, that should go away. But yeah, I would keep a very close eye on it and keep the cardio down for a while. Do some weights, mate. Lift some weights. Yeah, do that for a while, Chris. Yeah. Yeah, those sort of things. I mean, I'll just even show you guys. Just go down. That was 103 for my blood pressure. 101. Sometimes when I take a lot of these supplements, it can drop quite a bit. And this is when I went to the doctor just to impress him. Took a photo. That's why it's not very clear, so I do those sort of stupid things. What was the other thing? And that was back on the 23rd of July. And it's a whole lot of shit. There's Mira. Come on. That's what I've got the dark screen on my damn thing. It activates at night. Where is that other part? Yeah, fuck. So that was the 15th of February. Glucose 4.9. And 26th of January 4.9. Same. Just that's just a coincidence anyway, that it would be like that. But now I've got none of those things, so I can't even test myself because I don't bother. That was the last one that I actually did, and then I said, it's not fucking worth it. I don't need to do it. So it's a waste of money. It's usually low. So don't, when you're on a mostly carnivore diet, you have just, I know, my ice cream on Saturday. Anyway, but even one ice cream. Okay, I have one ice cream. It's got 20 grams of sugar in it. I have a second one. It's got 40. I've just gone for a long fucking walk, depleted a whole lot of glycogen. Where do you think it's going to go? So it's neither here or there in that sense. At most on that day, a bit from maybe because it's only steaks and the sauce and all that, and that's all cream, so there's nothing in there. I probably have 2 coffees. Let's say you get a couple of grams. Let's say at most 50, maybe 60 grams. It's still low carbish. It's nothing, a blip slightly. My millimoles may come down and then they'll go back up the next days, usually. So, and I don't have, as you know, I don't have my first meal until after I usually do my break. So it's, I've learned to sort of manage these things in a certain way and keep those things. And what I'm trying to, get across to you guys is try and sort these things out. Use supplements where you have to, and use foods where you have to. It depends on your circumstances. But I'm a big proponent of seafood and organ meats. I think they're nutrient dense. I think a lot of people who come to the carnivore diet usually come in a deficient way. They should be eating that sort of stuff. Long term, if you want to go more steak and less of these sort of things slightly, you may be able to get away with it. But when you're in those early days and you're quite deficient from the poorer diets you've come from, I think there's a good reason to eat those foods, in my opinion anyway. Okay, so you've been pretty high on salt. Okay. It's probably higher than what I consume. I probably consume around about 10 to 12, which probably puts me in the sodium level of about, 5 grams to, 4.5 to 6 to about 5.5 grams. So, okay, you're much higher than me. So, yeah, well, get your taurine up, please. Because, if you've got, the only thing I can say is, try the other electrolytes just in case, because at the same time, if you didn't fix the other electrolytes and you brought in the sodium, your body may be dumping salt continuously and using water to dump, and you may be pissing to try and maintain homeostasis with that lower level of magnesium and potassium in the cell. So that could be it as well. And the reason why your heart is sort of pounding like that is because you need potassium and magnesium, because remember, magnesium ATP, they work together. You require magnesium to make ATP, energy. So I would first basically get the potassium in the supplement, put it up to a high level, put the sodium up to a high level, hold it in, and then see what happens. And if it resolves it, then you know that you had low potassium and low magnesium in the cell. Because the problem is we can't test it. You can only test it in the blood. That's useless. And we can't put any devices in the actual cell to test. There's no test really. So the only way is to up these things with a higher sodium to hold them in, get a new homeostasis up here, and then see, are you still having if that problem goes away, then it's probably not any change in the morphology of your heart. But if it's still there, then you can say, I need to get my taurine up to 3 grams. But at this stage, I would do that and try and get the other supplementation up, see if it all resolves, just to be on the safe side, is what I'm thinking. But it does make drinks tasty, tangy. Oh, we're talking about the coal stuff. Are we? Don't know. Not going to go there. I'm going to get into trouble. God. Yes. Anyway, get that filthy stuff out of your head, Harry. You know what I mean. Golden whatever. Okay. Hi, all. Asleep to Harry and woke up to him. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you just woke up. So you must be in North America somewhere. Yes, on the eastern seaboard. Good evening to you, Zombie, as well. And we will move down. Yeah, getting plenty, mate. You're getting plenty more than me. So I don't think, I think still it's more than likely a homeostasis issue that needs to be resolved. And yep, and I noticed it in the bottom. You've actually said that you noticed that. Yeah, I think because you can put as much, if the potassium and sodium and magnesium are low, you can put as much sodium in as you like. It's just going to dump it out, because it needs to get homeostasis. So if these electrolytes are low, the body's going to be forcing out sodium continuously and dumping water, and you're going to be peeing all the time. So, but peeing can happen for other reasons as well. That's why sometimes, you can have high potassium, high magnesium, very low sodium, and also peeing because you're trying to pee out and get to homeostasis. You're peeing out the potassium and the magnesium. So, it's when you get to normal peeing, it's when you've actually stabilized these things. And the most important thing is to up those, to up them all, and then not worry so much. Get the food from the magnesium and the potassium from the food, and just let the body work out the homeostasis based on the sodium that you're putting in. So, yes, that's the ultimate trick of biohacking your electrolytes. Yes. It used to be through that people who went around correcting other people's grammar were just plain annoying. Oh, well. Now there's evidence that they're actually ill, suffering from a type of obsessive compulsive disorder. That must be me. Researchers calling it, yes. We all have a bit of that. Okay, grammar Nazi for short. Yeah, we know. Do you have to make it so obvious? Uh, sex so low, 1%. The content of magnesium, bicarbonate, potassium, and sodium. Look, yeah. Anyway, the sex salt we're talking about, so low or whatever. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know the brand. There's a lot of stuff, different stuff out there that you can use. That's true. Yes, yes. Yeah, you don't have a space between what and I. That will be pointed out by T1. That little troll that he is. Yeah. Oh, that's T2. He's just as bad. Yes. Welcome to the family. my two private trolls, T1 and T2. Yes. If I don't unleash them on everybody else, they'll pester me all night. That's the downside. Yes. You like it dirty and cheap, don't you? I bet he is. He's a big fan. Look, I'm not a fan. I basically say, if you've got a deficiency, use it. But once you've resolved the deficiency, keep the sodium up and just get the small amount that the body needs. High potassium isn't a good thing. Why do you think they don't sell it very easily? And in some countries they've restricted it because it can be harmful to your heart. High sodium is never going to kill you, but high potassium can kill you. It's dangerous. That is why if you're supplementing with potassium and supplementing in particular, magnesium is not an issue, but potassium in particular, you need to be supplementing with sodium as well. Very important to maintain homeostasis between those two. Yes. People never had this problem in the past because basically they, consumed in the proper way. And I've lost my spot. I love StreamYard. Thank you, StreamYard, for being annoying. Nothing like a good oxalate overload, mate. Tear your kidneys to pieces. It's fun. It's probably where citrate can work on its own. Or lemon juice. Apple cider vinegar is a bit of a problem. It can work, but the biggest problem with apple cider vinegar can be a problem on the teeth as well, the teeth enamel, consuming it very often, continuously. So sort of citric acid is probably a better option to use, so to speak. Yeah, good. We all need it. My dad's on it. He's 85, and his energy's gone up. He's much better place. So yeah, look, we just don't synthesize it as much. The body goes, oh yeah, you're an old fart. We don't need to do this. Let's just do the repair. See, the problem is with taurine, it's additional effort to produce it, and the body's trying to repair because remember, there's a fight. There's a constant war between repair and damage wins, unfortunately. So if you need to transcript more enzymes to do a whole lot of other processes, if you give your body taurine, well, it's already downregulated that. You're giving it something that it really needs. If you're basically giving it proteolytic enzymes, wonderful. It doesn't have to transcript them itself. If you're eating low carbohydrate, you don't have to use as much. You only have to use half the thiamine. A lot of nutrients, less magnesium, less thiamine, less this and that. Why? Because carbohydrate metabolism requires more. And it does more damage because it's more glycating, it's more reactive, and it creates more reactive oxygen species. So you need then more antioxidants, more of these repair things. So the whole reason is getting rid of that and supporting the body and slowing down the aging, basically, in a sense, because you're doing less damage and your body can keep up with repair much better. if it's not overtaxed doing other things, conversions and all that? Why give it ALA and not give it DHA? Why tax the system to do the conversion in the essential fatty acids if you don't need to do that? It's one less thing that it has to transcript, less enzymes for that purpose. So very important. And I did weights for 25 years. Probably the best thing you did. I'll tell you, there was one bodybuilder. He lived to 98. At the age of 95, he decided to go crazy on doing cardio. In 3 years' time, he was dead. Yeah. So, and they usually say after the age of 65, the worst thing you can do is cardio. It's so damaging to your body. You know, basically, if you want to accelerate osteopenia, osteoporosis, the loss of muscle mass, go cardio crazy in older age. Not a good thing. I go for moderate walks here, but most of them I try to basically do like high intensity. I do impact exercises, like I will jump up and down or do different types of impact, or resistance exercises, also really good. Those sort of things I do, because that is actually what is strengthening my muscles, strengthening my bones. That's what you need to do to force the body to basically fix those things. That's why when people go out into space in low gravity, they fall apart. So you need to do those sort of things, though they are more important. And the more you do them, the better it is. And I'll tell you one thing, because you've done weightlifting for so many years, you've got probably higher stores of nuclei, which means that when you do the weightlifting, a lot of your muscles are going to come back very fast, which is an advantage, because more muscle, high metabolism. Get that six-pack, mate. Yes, and get it in a healthy way with a more muscular body. Good. Yeah, that's good. Oh, look! Once you get rid of this, these high carbohydrate, sugary foods out of your diet, your blood pressure drops to more normal levels. But then you need to push your sodium up, obviously. I had incidents in what I call keto flu issues. This was many years back, where I nearly passed out. And I had a couple of incidents where I used to get off the seat and I would become dizzy. And then I learnt about, this issue about electrolytes. And since then, I've always kept my sodium up, even at work. I've got a salt shaker in, and I just grind into my water and drink it. So people see me and they think I'm weird, but I don't give a shit, because I'm low carbing. So my insulin is going to be low. I'm not going to I need extra sodium to, both keep my blood pressure up so I don't pass out and I look like an idiot at work. Let alone there are risks as well. Well, what the whole reason why you pass out is because your body needs to fall, so you don't need to fight gravity and you can get blood to the brain. That's the whole reason why you pass out. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. It is something that I will be working on, but not yet. Whatever works for you, T2. Yep. Oh, okay. I never heard. I haven't seen it. I saw one of Michaela's recently, which was talking about a dad. That interested me to find out how her dad was doing. Seems to be doing much better in Serbia, where he is currently. But I haven't. No, I haven't seen Coles. That would have been a bit funny. That'd be interesting. I should actually go and see it. I should actually check it out. I haven't seen much of his stuff recently. He sort of he put me off his sort of, like with Daphne. I sort of enjoy, the banter and, I get a few laughs out of it. And I do occasionally go and see some of Cole's old stuff because, you just laugh. But when he started getting into this piss stuff and, he sort of lost me a bit. Okay, Cole, you're really into golden showers? Good for you, mate. So, he sort of lost me on that one. Yes. Norway. Okay. Due to I work night shifts. Gotcha. Fair enough. Yes. Don't forget, eat in the daytime, in daylight, never at night. You should be fasting at night, even if you're working. Very important for your circadian rhythms. And get some blue blocking glasses as well. You can go for those stylish ones that Jared wears, sort of the rounded ones. Pretty good cover for those. Yeah. Yep. And mate, salt in coffee? I don't. Nah. I don't think I can do that. Walking in the sun is really good for you. That vitamin D, mate. That vitamin D. It's just excessive cardio you don't want to do. That's the, short walks is fine, but I don't actually walk like down the street or stuff like that. I go, you've seen me remember when I did that video, went up to Mount Stewart, up the hill. I was going up and panting all the way. That's what I do. So, it's like, and sometimes I basically, part of that, I may even jog a bit, like really intense, so it's short and intense, and then relax, and then walk back down the other way home. So that's what it is. I don't do I think the days that I used to do 26Ks and stuff like that are long gone now that I realize how problematic they can be. Yes. So, yes. Oops. That's Chris saying this electrolyte thing is where Saladino seems to have some come unstuck. What's probably the main reason he includes some carbs? I don't know, maybe. Is that the reason that he does? Because I haven't seen a lot of his stuff recently. The only stuff that I actually did look is stuff that people pointed me to in regards to the PUFA stuff. So I saw a bit of that and I wasn't really impressed with all the rat studies. And I said, is that all you got, Paul? So I left it. I wasn't, because it was disappointing. I said, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, see what he's got. But, it's just one rat study after another rat study after another rat study. And I'm going, okay, this is nonsense. I'm not going to waste my time. And I only saw half of it and that was it. And I pulled the plug and went back to watching my archaeological videos, which were far more interesting. So, yes. Yeah, maybe. Oh, look, maybe. Potentially. I don't know what he's doing, how he's eating and stuff like that. Yeah, no idea, to be honest. Yeah, well, that's the other thing with raw milk, because I consume raw milk as well, and raw milk is very high in potassium and very low in sodium. So it's another reason you sort of, it's good as a potassium source, don't get me wrong. But that's the reason why the Maasai bleed their animals, to get the electrolytes, the potassium and chloride from the bloodstream of these animals. So very, very important. Vivid mouse. I should be in bed, but I'm nosy. Yeah, well, say no more. We've got another nosy one here. I actually don't consume lemon juice as lemon juice. I just put lemon on my steaks. I wouldn't put it on any other food. And I know my father has it in the morning, warm. When he gets up, he'll have it as a first thing, and it sort of suppresses his appetite and he can eat later on. So he uses it for that reason. I'm disciplined enough to hold off until 11 or after before I eat. And, so I've used lemon juice just, you could say, as a seasoning thing. I've used it in the past when I was oxalate dumping, when I didn't have any citric acid supplements, and I had to use lemon juice for a while until I ordered some citric acid to deal with it. But look, lemon juice can also work. For one period when I was dumping, Dad's got a lemon tree and I got a whole lot of lemons, and I used those lemons at the time rather than pay extra money for the supplements. Since he had so many lemons, a whole bag full, so I brought them home and used them for that purpose. It's only the pulp part that's actually got oxalate. The juice itself doesn't, so it's not an issue. So, if you use the skin of a lemon, the skin of a lemon is high in oxalate. So they usually put it in cakes and stuff like that, as you know. So, yeah. So, no, you don't want to be using that. But the actual inside stuff doesn't. Not very low. Yeah, like I just use it for basically, flavor. I really like, so in particular pork. When it comes to lamb, not so much. Beef, I'm neither here or there. But when it comes to pork, I do like a bit of lemon juice on it. I do enjoy it. So that's just me. And I get them for free from Dad. They're all from his tree, which basically means there's no chemicals or anything on them anyway. So, but, is it required? Probably not. There's a lot of things we do that's probably not required. Ask T1. Not required. Well, if you're low carbing and your insulin is low, mine tends to get quite low. Sometimes I have to put a bit more sodium in just to make sure that I'm maintaining good blood pressure, because that's important as well. You should know, if you get up and you feel dizzy, you need to up your sodium. You need to try and retain more of the fluids, because your insulin is too low and you're not retaining fluids. So just keep that in mind. So really important. Yeah, your anxiety levels must have gone up. That's why, look, it fluctuates all day long. Let's be honest. Another person that likes salt in their coffee. God almighty. Some of you guys have got strange tastes. Okay, fair enough. Everybody's got their own unusual tastes. Yes, Randall cycle. Is there any reason to believe that PUFA would be problematic? Yeah, if in high carbs, it's because I'll give you an example. The level that because your hormones determine how calories are used in your body, okay, and your mitochondria as well. Things like stearic acid palmitate and stuff like that induce to some extent a reverse electron transport signaling through complex 1 in your mitochondria. What that does is it actually creates a reactive oxygen species, but as a signaling molecule. And because it's not going through the electron chain to do any damage, it's signaling out of complex 1. Okay. It's telling the cell to biogenesis new mitochondria, saying we've got a lot of energy. Let's ramp up more mitochondria to deal with the extra energy. But when you're using seed oils in particular, because that's what it usually is, seed oils, and you're combining carbohydrate, the problem is because there's a difference between pork lard, which is mostly saturated and monounsaturated and has a very small amount, 0.5 grams, for 100 grams of, and you're never going to get, and this is in a steak, that's quite fatty. So you're going to get half a gram. So it's quite low in a sense. So even if you had a big steak, you're getting to ancestral levels of 2 grams. So it's still low in a sense. But if you're having like seed oils, which is high PUFA or stuff like that, and then you combine it with that fat, the amount of, and let's put it this way, calories. ALA, as ALA, we're not talking about DHA. DHA is very hard to burn in the mitochondria. But as ALA, that is 9.3 calories. Seed oils like LA, linoleic acid, which is primarily in the seed oils, is 9.1. That's where the 9 comes from in terms of calories. Cocoa butter, which is very high in saturated fats, the amount of calories is 5.5. So as you can see, this whole calorie in, calorie out, and calories, even calories themselves, they don't match. Certain composition of proteins can be up to 4.44, but you don't burn protein unless you're really in one of those high carbohydrate diets and very low energy states, like a vegan diet. Then on the other hand, sugar can vary. If it's fiber, whether it's soluble or insoluble, soluble, nothing, it's just basically roughage goes out the back tuber. The insoluble, you can get a few, like a half a gram or whatever. It depends. It varies between bodies and all that. To around 4-ish grams. Oh, sorry, 4-ish calories per gram. So, in that regard. So we're talking about it. It depends on the profile of the food and stuff like that, and the fats and stuff like that. So when we're talking about PUFA, in this case, we're talking about very high amounts you're getting from seed oils in combination, because seed oils can't create. There is a ratio on how certain fatty acids can induce this reverse electron transport and reduce the amount of high energy particles moving through the electron chain and potentially causing more reactive oxygen species. Saturated fats don't do that, but seed oils do. They have a much higher, and as a consequence, because they don't have this reverse electron transporting effect, they can't be reduced in they supercharge the chain. And you've got sugar in that's doing the same thing. But remember, these are also high deuterium. So you've got nanomotors rotating really rapidly, then pushing the excess neutrons that have been accumulated, and they just do a lot of damage. So, and when you've got less capacity to use energy, you end up storing it. So that is why they are problematic from those sort of sources. But that's a long conversation to explain quantum biology, how this works. It's for a future subject to do on deuterium and deuterium depletion and stuff like that, and how your Krebs cycle, lipolysis and glycolysis, how they're all involved in basically generating water. What do? Dehydrogenase. All these stages of dehydrogenating. You're ripping off basically those hydrogens and deuteriums, so you can basically oxidize those carbon. And add a phosphate and send it as 3 carbons with a phosphate down to pyruvate. Oxidize it out as carbon dioxide, breathe out, and basically those combine with the oxygen and create water, metabolic water. And how clean that metabolic water just depends on what you're putting down your tube. Yes, and how much damage you're doing in there. But that's for another conversation. But let's put it this way. PUFA from seed oils is bad. PUFA from animal foods is not, because it's low in deuterium. There's the difference. I'll give you an example. Omega-3s, which is also a PUFA, is 102 parts per million. It's at the lower band of deuterium. Remember, you've got about 90 or 100 to about, you don't want to be too below that. You still need some deuterium in your system because it does have other roles, growth factors and stuff like that. But at the same time, not over 130. You want to be in the sweet spot. Well, lard is 100 as lard, 104.15, and things like fish oil, which is, tends the omega-3s, DHA and stuff like that's coming from cod liver oil or whatever, it's down to 102. At 102, let me put it this way, if you want to consume that on a daily basis, your primary energy, there is no way you would ever get cancer. You're cancer-proof. You're as good as basically those, what I call deuterium depleting machines, the camels, that have got low deuterium fat in their hump, and that's what they live off. So they never get cancer for that reason, because the nanomotors are not impeded, because oxidative phosphorylation, when it's reduced, you basically have to go to glycolysis and these other sort of forms, which basically creates the environment more conducive to cancer. But that's for another day of conversation. So really, you don't want that sort of shit in you when you combine it with carbs. It's what the fast food industry is. Cooks shit in these shit oils that are high in deuterium and highly oxidized and damaged, together with your fries, high carbohydrate. You combine the two and you end up with excess energy as well. So you're causing resistance at the cell level, and then you're storing the energy away. So it's one nice thing about saturated fats is that you create resistance at the fat cell, the complete opposite. So on that point, I would agree with Paul. He's right about that. But the difference is you need quite a bit of PUFA to do that. The amount of PUFA in animal foods is very low, and it doesn't. And usually, most animal foods comes with very high levels of both of saturated fats, and so there is no issue there at all. The problem comes from these vegetable seed oils. That's where it's always come from, And when you're dumping those as you're losing weight on a low carb diet, they're getting out there and they're causing a lot of reactivity and a lot of damage. And that's why people can be losing weight and be inflamed. Our ancestors weren't. They would engage the Randall cycle seasonally. They would eat fruit together with fatty animals as they had fattened up through the summer months. And basically they would be eating both those before they ran out. You see the things like the bears, they will down, 10,000 grapes within one sitting, and they'll go and have some other animals as well, so high-fat animals as well, and they'll fatten up. So that's engaging the Randall cycle by mixing their key energy macros. And as a consequence, but they don't get damaged. They don't get basically, arterial damage, cardiovascular disease, and all this sort of stuff. So there is a difference, engaging the Randall cycle for a small period of time for those purposes that we used to do. Now, if we don't engage it at all, nearly at all, through the year, and we stick to a much lower carbohydrate diet, not an issue. The PUFA content in pork, eggs, or whatever, not an issue. There's an old geezer that I talked about, as I pointed out, and Bart knows the study because I actually sent it to him ages ago, 17.5 grams of PUFA, way above the 4 grams that people, claim is a problem. This guy outlived his parents. His dad died at 40, his mum at 76. No longevity genes, this guy, but still completely healthy at 88 and outlived most other people in his family. So that's a paradox, like the French paradox, something that, Paul should keep in mind. It's not good science to basically, he needs to explain this paradox, and not with rat studies, but with human studies. And if he doesn't have any human studies, he should say, I don't have anything. This is just my personal opinion, and it's my hypotheses, and leave it at that. I've got no problems with people putting forward hypotheses, even if they're dumb hypotheses, but don't claim that you've discovered something and the rest of us are stupid or something. So, yeah. Especially with dodgy pseudoscientific explanations. Finally, we see you live. Oh, great. It's good to see you, mate. It's been a while. Normally watch the uploads afterwards. Yeah, not a problem, mate. Got any questions? Please ask. Oops. Oh, StreamYard, don't do this again to me. Yes. Did you do a gallbladder flush? I sort of did ages ago. And so which one did you do? Did the gallbladder flush protocol a few weeks ago, but had severe dehydration issues. Yeah, look, that can happen in that regard. I usually do it a bit differently. I don't know what the actual, what I did was, for a long period of time, about a month, I basically used both milk thistle, and I also used a supplement. Let me just find it. What's it? Let's see if I can bloody find it. No. Get there. Where is that? Piper, where the hell is it? Yeah, I can't find the damn company. thing. I've got it on the other bloody machine. That's the problem, because I usually do it from my work machine. I order it because I used to get it directly sent to my workplace, so I didn't have to basically go to the post office, run around. It's basically malic acid, and I basically did malic acid for about a month to soften the actual stones. I also used things like sort of the bovine I used the bovine bile salts. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the brand now. I got it on iHerb. It's a bovine bile salts on iHerb, but I can't remember the brand. And basically, I used that. I used also for the enzyme that actually helps recycle biosalts, which is the FXR enzyme. So you need that. You need also MK4, which is important for bile salt synthesis. And so doing all that together sort of softened. I did get a number of spells where I got sort of loose stools as well. That was fun. I did that on the weekends because it was not possible at work in that regard. And so I would have some olive oil sort of stuff and pretty much, cleared a lot of that sort of stuff out in that regard. So, and I also had, at the same time, had some candida and stuff like that. And I ended up using a supplement for that breaks down candida. So it goes in, it's a, let me just find that. Because that's another issue that actually does take place with people. Okay. Usually people have all these, they've got that, because you're not basically flushing out properly, and you need basically bile salts. You need basically good levels of also your stomach acid to be good. So I actually used, the sort of acidifiers for the stomach. So used all that. So it was a combination of all these sort of things to basically work on the stomach side, on the recycling side, on all these sort of things to sort of get the whole thing moving along, working. It was a bit painful. I had a few painful when with some of these stones coming out. So it was, I've still got a bit of sludge, and I notice a bit now and then, but it's usually it's reducing. It's sort of because I had many years that I was doing a lot of vegetables, which is and also doing much lower fat, which isn't a good thing, because if you don't use it, you lose it type thing. And that's really where the problem comes from. That's why these sort of things don't exist. You get Eskimos and people or the Inuit, as they're called, they never had these issues. It's only with carbohydrates and low fat diets that really all these issues have ballooned. I mean, in the last 30 years, the amount of operations, gallbladder operations, has just gone through the roof. And again, if you're not using something, bile goes in there, and if it's not used, it builds up, and basically solidifies and creates sludge and stuff like that. So, it's usually from such diets, and my dad had a similar thing, and he ended up with pancreatitis in the hospital. But luckily, the big stones came out and literally caused him a lot of grief, a lot of inflammation. So he was in hospital for a couple of weeks, but he didn't lose his gallbladder, thankfully. Okay. Let me try and find the damn thing. And let me share. That's the product. for candida. You take it in 2 weeks, so you take quite a few tablets, and it usually resolves that issue as well. Because a lot of that, SIBO, candida, all that, they seem to all come in together with problematic gall bladder functioning as well. So it's a bit of all these things. So I just basically hammered all of them in one hit, and it's a much better way to do it. It resolves things much better. So anyway, that's that. Back to me. Huge muscle cramps in my legs. Personal opinion about these flushes. No, I didn't really have any leg cramps or anything like that. That could be an electrolyte thing. No, I can't remember having any leg cramps no. Yes, I mentioned it a few times. Did he now? Fair enough. So he's got some issues, and that's why. Okay, so he's trying to use. I get you. So he's trying to use basically carbohydrate to sort of push insulin slightly higher to hold in for retention or something along those lines. Why doesn't he consume a bit more salt? Oh, anyway, confusing what people do, and then they try and justify it. Oh well, so be it. I'm a coffee salt as well. I actually missed it. If I forget to salt it, I believe it was Eric Burgess that told about it. Yeah, he'd come up with something crazy like that. Not surprised. No thanks. I prefer my coffee nice and creamy and not salty. I like salt, but yes. G'day, Christina. Good to see you. Yep, that's the perfect combo. Donuts. It's a superfood. Yes. She worked this weekend. I couldn't stay up for yesterday, Chad. Oh, fair enough. Yeah, it is 2 hours in. It definitely is. Definitely is. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, a lot of people just aren't aware of that importance, because we've got these confounding. You can't have people consuming like the Okinawans, which are the longest lived people, consuming both eggs and a high pork diet. They basically consume, they usually say, we start the day with pork, we finish the day with pork. All their meals are pork. Sardinians, they don't use olive oil in the mountainous regions. In the tourism areas on the coast, yeah, but in the mountainous regions, the pastoral people, like my great-grandfather and all that, lard. My father used to help his mother, with the larding, because there was no olive oil. It's down on the coast, and it was small amounts. It was used for lighting and stuff like that. Animal fats were primarily used since antiquity. I've done the Greek thing with the ancient Greeks and what they really ate, and the nitrogen-15 isotope analysis. Yes, it was primary animal, terrestrial animals with a bit of coastal small fish. So, so that the bones do not lie. So, and that's why, when people say, oh, this is what this study says, I go, I don't give a shit what that study says. I've got millions of years of archaeological evidence showing the complete opposite. What am I to believe? Millions of years of adaptation, or basically what you're telling me? How can pork be bad when small piglets are hunted by early hominins and also the chimps? They hunt them. So it's been in our diet for millions of years. How can it be bad? So I just don't buy it, and especially with all the longevity. Let's not forget that it's got the lowest insulinogenic properties. So out of all the foods that you can eat, other than pure fat, pork will raise insulin the lowest out of all the meats. So you can combine it with a bit of carbs and with some physical activity and still maintain a lower insulin level than somebody just eating a whole lot of steaks. So, it's not like people try to claim. There's a lot of, you have to nuance these things. There's the deuterium angle, so energy production side of things. Energy is important for all animals, So, yeah, people like to, what they do is they do this reductionist stuff to try and actually press home an argument. But this reductionist nonsense and narrow types, it's like say, this thing will kill you. And you go, what sort of dose did you give that poor animal? A dose which is beyond realism, like 100-fold compared to what a human would normally eat. That's ridiculous. And that's the sort of reductionist, stupid science that people do. And that's the sort of science that these people keep on quoting. And it pisses me off because it's pseudo science. Anything can kill you in high dose. Even the most healthiest thing can kill you in too much. It's just crazy stuff. The croissant diet guy has a good blog on saturated and PUFA fats and reverse electron transport stuff. Yeah, easy to follow than hyperlipid blog. Yeah, look, exactly. There's a lot of people out there that realize that it's a much more complicated picture and there are more facets to good health. So stearic acid is really good. But you will hear people say, "Oh, stearic acid is in supplements. Oh, that's awful. It's going to kill you. Saturated fat." Yeah, but it induces the highest level of reverse electron transport. And if you're inducing the highest level of reverse electron transport, what are you doing? You're actually increasing the biogenesis of new mitochondria. You're increasing your capacity to have more energy in the body. Increasing the energy levels is what we want. We can live longer. It means we can detoxify, we can heal, we can do things. We can nourish our bodies better because we can transcript enzymes, we can build enzymes because we've got the additional energy. So anybody telling you that, stearic acid is bad, you just need to look at them and say, you're going to die earlier. And just ignore them because they're just idiots. Anyway, any thoughts on what would interfere with the body's ability efficiently to make pyruvate? Could be a number of factors. Could be genetic, potentially. Usually people that have those sort of genetic problems, issues, don't last very long on this earth. But in terms of energy from carbohydrates is, fundamentally that's what we're talking about. It's usually the overaccumulation of deuterium. Ultimately, that's what you really, you literally are really just, because remember, pyruvate is basically the end stage of a 10 enzymatic stage of producing energy from carbohydrates. So, that's high in deuterium. You load yourself up with too much using that pathway. Ultimately, in the long run, you're going to be doing more damage to those nanomotors and you will pay for it. So, a lot of things will start not working optimally. The concept importance of deuterium opened up a whole new rabbit hole for me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for a lot of people, for me as well. But also light, very important in terms of melatonin, the circadian rhythms between cortisol and melatonin and the repair mechanisms, the repair, value in those folds that you see in the mitochondria. So you see those folds, you see that those inner big spaces, that is where lipolysis that is working, and also glycolysis is working there, and that's where also the citric cycle, TCA cycle, the Krebs cycle, whatever is there as well. And they're going through all these stages of creating metabolic water, getting rid of carbon dioxide and oxidizing, through these stages and oxidizing basically carbons. And then those in that water rich of neutrons. Sorry, proton-rich type water, not the neutron-rich, proton-rich type water, will basically will get pumped through those, pumps, our complexes, complex 1, complex 3, and complex 4. Complex 2 doesn't do any pumping. It does other things, transferring and stuff like that. And so those will basically take those hydrogen ions, strip the electrons off for the electron chain, because you need electrons to basically have the pumps to work. They use the electrons, to power, so you need energy for the pumps, electricity. So you need the electrons, and then basically it pumps through the proton. And when the proton gradients in the inner space increases, then basically it'll come through that final nanomotor at the end, and that will be rotating and basically creating ATP synthase. And then you'll build up phosphate. As the night goes on, you build up phosphate, and as you build up phosphate, cortisol drops, and you get an increase in basically melatonin. So it all works beautifully, and you start getting tired and you feel sleepy because you're supposed to. You want to build up phosphate in order to basically, get sleepy and have more melatonin. So the whole purpose is then to repair overnight your brain and all sorts of other parts of your mitochondria. So yes, very important. So it is a combination of food, light, and water, metabolic water, so the deuterium side of things. Okay, so where are we? I would not do that to a dangerous. One stone, wrong direction, problem, use K2. That will break down the stones. Yeah, K2, which I mentioned as well, which helps as well. It has, and you're right, correct, the MK4. Yes, but you also need the milk thistle for the FXR, which is the other issue. To biosynthesize new bile, to be able to push through and sort of clear all that out as well, you do need that, but also you do need to recycle. It's sort of the other importance about recycling is it reduces the amount of potential diarrhea as well, or the severity of that. So yeah, fixing those enzymatic pathways is. But yeah, thanks, Alex. You've been listening, mate. Yes, because a lot of people try to do these things without, a number of these things, and yes, and they sort of don't get perfect results because, all these organs are connected. Your liver is connected to and works with your pancreas and works with your stomach and all this, and they really work in symphony, and you really need to support them all while you're doing this, so very important. Okay. Yep, because basically you had too many gallstones in there. Sometimes you sort of have to cut a bit back and try and soften them, and then try and actually work on this protocol to basically slowly get rid of them. It takes time, and it depends. And sometimes if it's just stones, it's usually, they can soften and get out. But if it's also sludge, it can really Yeah, sludge is much harder to get out, which is the biggest problem, but it can take much longer. It seems to have more stickiness in the lower part of the actual gallbladder itself. It seems to, so you can actually get new bile in the top part and it will come through, but as long as the sludge isn't too much and it reduces over time, it's probably less of a problem, but it can still cause the occasional incident or issue now and then. Yep, yep. Mentioning some of their other products. Yep. Okay, we've talked enough about that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the old story, use it or lose it. That's what a lot of people haven't been using it for a long time and been creating a lot of sludge in there and stones. Because if it's not going out to be used, it will accumulate. And yep, thanks to all of us. That's good. Yeah, look, I've chatted about these in the past, and some other people have also done a bit of their own research, and we try to share some of our knowledge, which is important. We can all help each other, is important. And thanks, Alex, for all your input, and Chris. G'day, Mandy. Good to see you. Oops. Oh, thank you, StreamYard. Removed. Yeah, look, yeah, it's not a pleasant thing. Actually, it does actually the body really needs it. People say, "Oh, you don't need your gallbladder." It actually tries to grow back. Yeah, you don't need it. Yeah. Tell me more. Key, I get more satiated when I eat pork. I often feel hungry after eating beef. Yeah, I'm a bit similar. If I have beef, I can still eat after. I find myself when I eat pork, I'm sort of much more satiated. So in that sense, it's probably I may have my feminine side. I may need more fat. Don't know. MK4 Vigor. What about phosphoric acid soda? Oh, look, I've heard of people using it, but I haven't bothered. At the end of the day, you really just need to get the liver, stomach acidity with, and your pancreas sort of working in sync. So I use also enzymes, proteolytic enzymes. I put enzymes in there. And that same company has also got digestive enzymes and stuff like that. So it's a combination because for all that to work. And then slowly but surely it sort of starts getting better over time. It all takes time. Definitely not. It's some of the stuff that actually causes more problems. These proton pump inhibitors and stuff like that, they sort of tend to lower the acid. So you tend to malabsorb, creates a lot of other issues. And most of these people that are doing these proton pump inhibitors are also, doing low fat diets. So yeah, it's just a mess for their stomach, a mess for their liver, a mess, for their gallbladder, a mess, for their pancreas with the insulin, the high insulin and everything else. It's just modern medicine. Yeah, an oxymoron. So yeah, okay. Yeah, add a bit of butter to the cat's food. Interesting. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's a carnivorous animal. It doesn't eat sugar. It does require energy. Yes, especially some of the cats that get outdoors, the more adventurous style ones, they definitely need a bit of extra fat. And all of the cat foods nowadays are sort of lean as well. More, it's just, God, I don't know what people are thinking producing foods out there. No wonder animals are getting sick. Yeah, exactly. They love fat. They eat animals. They eat fat and protein and all that sort of stuff. They probably don't need as much fat as we do. Bigger brains, more energy requirements, and all that. But in that regard, yep. See you, mate. Good. Could cycling damage those nanomotors? Um, anything else pushing mitochondrial genesis except deuterium depleted diets? Look, there's sort of I would say the deuterium depletion is one of the major things. If I sort of first say that when people have got some mitochondrial dysfunction or whatever, first do the deuterium side. That means fix your deuterium, lower your deuterium levels, try and fix that. Once you get to a certain level, and also fix your sleep, melatonin. Fix your sleep, the deuterium level and the sleep. And over time, that extra melatonin, the higher levels of melatonin, will repair those nanomotors, will do repair work as well. It's a potent antioxidant, so we'll do a lot of repair work there. So once you've done that for a certain period of time, I usually say 12 months, then consider upping slightly the energy production capacity. Now, how do we do that? Once we've got mitochondria that are in a much healthier state, then we can consider using certain herbs, and I haven't released it yet, it's in the process of being released, which will explain certain herbs that actually initiate more biogenesis of mitochondria, one. The second thing, support mitochondrial function, so the electron chain, so that would be more part of the redoxes, so more NAD+. But we also, for older people, we need to, one of the things is niacin, but lower doses. We don't want high doses. That has side effects like affecting gluconeogenesis, affecting lipolysis. It has negative sides. So you need to be, I would say, below 300 is a safe zone. I usually would say stick to about 100 to 150. Don't go really much higher. We don't need higher levels of niacin. Niacin's got, the other thing is it suppresses an enzyme called CD38. CD38 increases with age, and it basically degrades NAD+. So the capacity to basically increase your energy production is diminished because of this enzyme as it increases, because it degrades it. And so it's probably part of a mechanism to basically, but we don't really understand it. So I usually say, I don't believe, there are some people out there that are saying we could live for a long time, 300, 400 years if we suppress CD38. I'm not convinced, because CD38 is required for some other metabolic processes. And if you really suppress CD38 in rats really low, they fall apart. Their connective tissue falls apart. So it's playing a role, but we don't fully understand well. But why does it increase with age? We don't know. We got no idea. But with a low dose niacin, like 50 to 100 milligrams, we can basically get the best of both worlds. One, we can reduce CD38 to more youthful levels, and we can increase NAD+ to more youthful levels. So that's much better. That's a much safer way of doing it, and that's how I approach. Some people don't like nice and flushes. I understand. This is why I'm going to talk about these other herbs and stuff like that that can be used to basically influence these pathways, which are safer as well. There are people trying to develop drugs for this, but I wouldn't touch them because they're sort of like an on-off. And if you do something like that to something like that, you're going to create a lot of side effects. It's a bit like statins. These people just blunt a pathway in an arbitrary way. I don't think that's a healthy, natural thing. Regulating it down to it's like boron, which I say, take boron to suppress this to sort of normalize your hormones between your estrogen and testosterone. I don't like these sort of things that, really try to magnify one or the other, because that's a very unnatural thing. And that's more dangerous when I hear people saying that. It's because they can monetize it. So, yeah, it's like all these, artificial hormone replacement therapies that they've done in the past and caused women cancer and all sorts of things. It's because of this artificial way. It's not a sort of a natural sort of adjustment. It's sort of an artificial, exaggerated way that they are actually pushing certain pathways. And so you're always going to get into trouble with those sort of things. So it's got to be very careful and all that. But, if you want to basically have better nanomotors, get a bit of good quality cod liver oil, the Rosetta one, which is the one that I get out of Norway. And I've put links on other, you go to some of my other live streams, you'll actually see it. I actually provide even also links to it. So that's the other thing. And give me a sec. Oops. I'll throw the link in there so you can actually find it. Okay, there you go. So that's the only one. I would not bother with any of the others. And, things like that, because it's much lower. But I would say more, try and get more fish in your diet. What is, I like to combine pork and fish much more. I have some beef, but I've started to shift away. I look at my father, he just basically, he loves pork, fucking lives off pork and fish. And he's 85 years old. So I think he's doing something right, especially when I've got my next door neighbour saying, oh, he's got better skin than you. Yeah, annoying, isn't it? Yes, he doesn't do as many indiscretions as I do either. We're all rogue, apparently. Where that raw milk is highly superior to the crap. Yeah, that's right. It is. It's got enzymes. It's got a whole lot of, it's got lactoferrin. So it's got a whole lot of things which are really good for the immune system. It does have bovine hormones, but they're unimportant because we don't have receptors for bovine hormones. So our body doesn't use them. So they don't have an effect. And when you're talking about estrogen, it's estrone, not estradiol. It's the weaker form. And it's in basically, you can have a couple of glasses of milk and probably get a few nanograms of estrone, and men produce 53,000 a day, and women's over 630 odd thousand. So a non-issue. So that's I've done chats with Bart, and I've talked about the milk stuff, about what a lot of bullshit all that is, all the myths that are there. Yeah, raw milk's great. the Maasai have been consuming 3.5 to 4.5 litres a day on average. So nothing wrong with those blokes. Great warriors. They kill lions, remember. Nothing soft cock about them. G'day, Dave. Good to see you, mate. Keep hearing about different advice about eating tin fish as a regular tin sardine consumer. You got to be very careful with the type of. First of all, make sure that there are no oils in the tin, because they will be rancid and you're wasting your money. And also the coating. Some of the coatings can be problematic, like BPA and other things like that. There are a number of different types. I tend to go to a fish. Would say to people, go to a fish market. I go to the waterfront and buy my sardines and other things. So yeah, less of a risk. But there are some brands. There are a couple of websites that do have brands. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but if you Google, you will find where they will tell you what brands, the quality of the type of, where they've analysed the tin methodology that they've used, that they've applied. So, and then you can actually then say, okay, because look, tinned sardines is not a real problem, let's be honest. They've been around for years. People have consumed them, but it's really some of the manufacturing procedures have changed, and that's where the problem lies. So you need to check out. I usually try to get mine fresh. I do have had in the past tin stuff, but I can't remember the brands off the top of my head now. It's been a while. Okay, and contemporarily excess deuterium drive genesis through hormesis. No. That's a simple one. Give estrogen to males to prevent cardiovascular outcomes. Sad diet, I suspect. they'll do anything. It's a crazy, crazy world, Christina. Those niacin flushes through the release of prostaglandin push away towards an inflammatory state. Yeah, well, niacin's a different thing altogether. So, and that's a temporary. The flush is a temporary thing, So that's a different thing. We're talking about deuterium here damaging the nanomotors. That means rather than having in that inner space, inner membrane space, as it's called, rather than having smaller protons, we've got neutrons, which are much heavier and larger. They can't get through the nanomotors, and they rip them to pieces. They damage them, and then they don't work. And if you don't have enough repair capacity, you end up with damaged nanomotors. You cannot basically produce extra ATP, extra energy. You're forced into a state of glycolysis, which is very poor energy production. I'm trying to repair somebody's nanomotors that have been completely decimated, and she's complete decimation of she's got about 5 years to live. Basically, they've given her 5 years, that's it, and she's got completely damaged nanomotors, from radiation, from chemo, from all this sort of stuff. And basically even the lipolysis doesn't work. The Krebs cycle's fallen apart. All she's got is basically, and she eats a lot of meat, and that's the only thing she can do, because meat is lower in deuterium, but it gets turned into inefficiently to energy, and at the same time, it doesn't leave her enough energy on the other side to deal. But we're trying to keep the deuterium down, because there's also the risk, of, we don't want to give these growth factors as well in the system, because they've said, well, in 5 years' time, you're either going to be dead because you're going to fall apart slowly and surely, or you'll get cancer, one of the two. So, yeah, not a shit prognosis. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to flush out all with deuterium depleted water. So we've gone the other way, trying to flush out the deuterium, trying to slowly allow the healing of some of the, the electron chains. So if we can get some of those working again, we can upregulate repair and slowly restore oxidative phosphorylation and start a normal functioning over time. So it may take a bit longer for her to recover in that way, but if she persists, and I completely encourage her to persist, she will get there eventually. But it takes time because there's so much damage. It could happen earlier. This is uncharted. This, I haven't promised her anything, and she knows it. I've given her the, this is the, last sort of chance sort of situation. That's the sort of cases that I deal with, the really intractable, really difficult cases. As Bart knows, I very rarely do consultancies because, one, I don't need the money. I work for, I've got a day job and I don't have the time basically between domestic life and that. But one thing that I do, that I am focused is if people are really in difficult spot, I will do free consultancies for those people and only those people. So I will use some of my free time to try and help them sort of survive or recover their health from really difficult circumstances, or if they're a young person and their mental functioning is falling apart or stuff like that. I want to help those people because they're in a very difficult spot. So I pick the people that I want to help, and that's where my focus is primarily, as they know. But I wouldn't really worry about, it's no different than basically going out and exercising or pumping iron. That is basically, it'll give you a hormetic effect. It's not chronic inflammation. So it's a non-issue. So don't worry about things like that. But we don't want very high, nice and anyway, because you're trying to force too much NAD plus in the system with nanomotors which may not be performing up to par, and you're pushing one part of the system too hard when another part of the system isn't working as hard. Do you get me? Not a good thing. That's why I usually recommend much lower doses. And if people basically, and I usually say to them, if you're eating a lot of animal foods, a lot of meats and stuff like that, and your blood sugar is very high, but you don't seem, even when you're up the amount of fat you're not getting enough energy, you feel you're not getting enough energy, that tells me you've got mitochondrial damage because you can't utilize fat and you seem to be using a lot of glycolysis, far more. And if you continue doing that without fixing the problem, you will build up more and more neutrons, more and more deuterium in the mitochondria, and you will damage more and more of those electron chains. And then you will be in a state of, like this lady, in a state of glycolysis. So, you may need to deplete to some extent and look at those sort of things. So and fix your sleep patterns to repair those sort of things. You need to get your priorities right, pretty much, in a lot of these sort of states. So, yes, we'll be doing some videos on that sort of stuff. Okay, Harry, I think your papa has been using retinol longer than you. I think so. Look, I know that he actually does use cod liver oil, and he has used cod liver oil longer than me. That's true as well. So he does have more omega-3s in his diet, more more retinol in his diet. He probably consumes more liver than I do more often. So he's doing a lot of things that I probably should be doing as well, but I'm a bit lazy sometimes and all that. So, yeah, there's probably a bit of truth in that. Yes, none of us are perfect, and I can tell you I'm not. Yes, I need to be a bit more consistent like the old boy. He's way more consistent than I am. That's true. Yes. Anyway, not a problem. Bloody hell, we're 10 minutes away from the end. So you got 10 minutes for any last questions or some comedy pieces from T1 and T2, something to see us out with a bit of humour. No. G'day, Luke. Good to see you, mate. They have a saying in Australia when you get up early, they say, did you shit the bed? They don't mean you shit the bed, but, it's a saying. So I needed to clarify that before I actually said it, just so I didn't offend you, because it can translate wrongly in a different language. So did you shit your bed, mate? Thoughts on DHA versus EPA? Body needs both, and in natural foods, you will get it in the right amounts. So, the EPA does have a more sort of anti-inflammatory roles and certain signaling roles and a few other things. DHA also, but it has more structural roles and stuff like that. It incorporates in as part of structural membranes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they have their purpose in the body, in different parts of the body. In terms of the eyes, DHA is a very important component, and a very important component with light regulation as well. So, and melatonin production. So, the levels will vary and will adjust the signaling back to the brain. And when you've got too much blue light, you can degrade the DHA in your eyes and affect the melatonin production as well. So it does play, but that's getting into the sort of quantum biology, light, electricity, deuterium stuff, which I don't want to get, because that would be a big rabbit hole to go into. And I have a tendency of jumping into rabbit holes at the wrong time when we're 8 minutes out. So I better be careful I don't go down that rabbit hole. Why is lactose better than other sugars? Well, first of all, galactose will, for 4 enzymatic steps, will convert to glucose. So basically, lactose is glucose and galactose, and the galactose will, through 4 enzymatic pathways, and how efficiently that will convert will depend on the genetics you've got. So some people will take in more, will convert more of it into sugar. Others will just get rid of it in their feces. So it can vary as well. So even sugar from milk can vary quite a bit. Natural sugar from raw milk tends to be much lower, and you have more fat content. Through commercial milks, the proportions are different because they siphon off the cream and they change the composition of the milk. And so you end up with a lower fat type product, but that's commercial milk compared to raw milk in that regard. But look, if you're physically active, and also it is a sugar which is much lower in deuterium as well. So while lactose can fatten you up, if you're having a lot of lactose and a lot of fat can fatten you up, you're not doing a lot of physical activities like the Maasai. The difference is that it's a low deuterium. It's like, for instance, when you take from a triglyceride, you take the backbone, the glycerol backbone, which is a sugar component, you release the free fatty acids to be burnt as long chain fats in your mitochondria, and you basically use that glycerol to produce through gluconeogenesis endogenous sugar. That is low deuterium sugar. Okay? The same thing with lactose, because it's an animal-based product. The reason why sugar from plants is much higher in deuterium is because it has higher concentrations. Its carbon makeup is different. Remember, plants are concentrating carbon and deuterium, that's what, deuterium basically is a source where you've got higher levels of carbon molecules in a certain combination that will combine with more of these heavy isotopes. And that is why, and it's also used as a growth factor, because even in children, it's used as a growth factor. That's why they suck it out of their mothers. So that's what the plant does. But the stuff that you're creating from fat, from glycerol, is much lower in deuterium. So all sugars are not made equal in that regard. So they're not the same. So some have more deleterious effects than others. Even, when you're looking at, for instance, some sugars, even from the plant world, can be like at 145 parts per million, and others be at 155 parts per million. And I can tell you the upper limit of the safe zone is 130, which is olive oil. So the sweet spot is about 120 something. So it's only a couple, 5 or 6 parts per million, the difference. It's that gradients of difference, which can be quite, a couple of parts per million here or there, can make the difference whether the body has the ability to, in the mitochondria, whether you've got the ability to cleave off that deuterium, replace it with, a hydrogen ion there, and basically then dehydrogenate that and create better metabolic water. But if you've got too much of that, that replacement process doesn't work. It's overloaded. Some of it will get through. So it's all a matter of keeping within the capacity for the body to basically deuterium deplete. If you exceed the capacity, some of that will end up in that water and will do some damage. And that's what happens. So it's all about, so these sort of foods are not the problem. Yes, you have a lot of lactose, you'll fatten up. They use it in animals to fatten them up. So we know skim milk is used to fatten up animals. But if you're basically, doing a lot of bodybuilding and stuff like that and using it that way, so I usually consume most of my milk when, like, if it's a bad day and I'm not going to go and do a lot of exercise, it's really cold and all that, I don't have milk that day. I usually just have cream in my coffee and I'll leave it at that. But if I'm basically lifting weights and doing something like that, yep, I want a bit of that more anabolic effect so I can build my muscles. So I use it appropriately. And it would be much better if some people were using that product rather than honey, which is high deuterium. Yes, it's because the way the pollen, which has got high deuterium, is taken by the bees and then put into honey. So it's coming from that plant source. That's where the problem lies. So yes, very different. What do you say? Up before the sparrow farts is another saying. Yep. It doesn't surprise me you would use such a term, T2. And I'm surprised this other fellow didn't make any specific comment in relation to that. Yes, exactly. You must talk about dose of niacin. There are studies that people in YouTube are pushing grams of NMN for longevity, which in turn equates to a lot more than a few grams. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And they don't work because basically the idiots don't understand. One, NMN has a phosphate cleaved off, and it ends up being NR anyway, and you pay more for it, for your body to do an extra enzymatic step to cleave off the phosphate and turn it into NR. It's laughable. I just go, I giggle. Oh, you idiot, you paid extra money for the NMN. That's one piece of nonsense. The other thing is, it can, under certain circumstances, not bioabsorb very well if you've got some issues, some enzymatic problems, some, gut issues or whatever, can be an issue as well. Niacin doesn't have that problem. It just goes in very easily. So it doesn't need any special, it's got a separate pathway to NAD+, a completely separate pathway. And the other nice thing about it, niacin, that pathway doesn't involve CD38. But CD38 will inhibit NR. So as you get older, these supplements don't work as well unless you're inhibiting CD38. Yeah, I know. Look, I probably should make something, because a lot of people don't realize niacin's cheap. And they're paying an arm and a leg, especially if they're in my age bracket, 50s and over, you're throwing away money. Because I can tell you a lot of these people probably had unhealthy lives for a long time. They probably have much higher CD38 levels of this enzyme. So, yes, throwing good money after. Yeah, I know. I sometimes listen to that and I go, I giggle. Because I know it's, oh, fuck. Another sucker born. You're welcome, Christina. Yep. Yeah. I will quickly go. Just notice cod liver oil is much higher in DHA compared to fish oil. Exactly. And much safer for you, especially that brand. Please only buy that brand. Do not buy some of the others, because some of the others have high aldehydes. They are poorly processed. This is done in a more traditional way, and it doesn't have those problems. Yes. Yep, they don't, unfortunately. But it's a respiratory infection. So get your vitamin D levels up, Mike, to protect yourself. So you need higher vitamin D. And if you're fatter, you need more vitamin D, because a lot of that vitamin D will go straight into your fat cells. So keep that in mind. And what is T2 saying? It's so deadly. You need to test to see if you have it. You need to do a lot of tests for a lot of things, but we won't go there, because I'm going to be nice to you tonight. We will not be rude. Will we, T1? Or is he still here? Is he gone? We'll save up my rabbit hole quick. Yep. Next time. Yep. Yeah. Get it early in so I can actually spend a bit of time, because once we get to the end, it's not an easy thing to do. Exactly. Deal. Yeah. Doing on skin issue. Yep. All that sort of stuff. Yep. Good skin. Having MK4, retinol is, and omega-3s, really good for that sort of stuff. And something about a pinch of salt. Yep. And I am out of here, guys. We're nearly 4 minutes past. Thanks, guys. What is that? T1 has debunked himself under the table. Sorry, drunk himself under the table. Yeah, probably debunked himself as well. Got a bump in his head. Yep. Definitely would have. You're welcome, mate. Not a problem. You're welcome, Dominique. Yeah, sort of. Exactly. That would be T1. He's definitely on the Terps. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock here, so I usually go at about 10:30. So I'll get into bed. I got work tomorrow, so shouldn't push it too hard in that regard. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, look. The problem is, it's the way the communities, and it's sometimes hard to do a lot of that. I try to do a bit with Bart and all that because I find Bart and Pim, they are more empiricists like me. There's no bullshit. It's on the science. If there's good science, yep. If it's not good science, well, it's an opinion. That's all it is. And as Bart says, we don't have the science. We've got inferences. We've got N of ones. We've got basically the archaeological evidence, which I've talked about a lot in the and yeah, so that's really how it goes. Anyway, good seeing you guys. I appreciate you being here. Always fun and always different sort of. Sometimes I have to read this sort of stuff because sometimes you guys have got a slightly different angle. You're looking at it from your own sort of perspective or how it's actually affecting you. And I'm sort of, because I know it in a certain way, I've dealt with it in a certain way, and then I'm going, hold on, need to understand. So, if I misconstrue something, just remind me. We're all human. And thanks, guys. I appreciate you turning up. We've had a good crowd this evening, better than some other evenings. It got up for a moment there, got up to about 32, which was really important. If you haven't liked the video, please like it or even dislike it. Just give me something. It all counts. Yes. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Anyway, God bless you. Have fun. Take care. And, we will chat next week. And I'll try and get something out this week as well. So see you guys. Take care.